स्टडी IQ IAS, अब तैयारी हुई अफोर्डेबल।
Hello, dear students, and welcome back again to this session of World History discussion. We will very quickly have a look at the period of Napoleon. We'll try to understand what his period basically entails for France and Europe, and we'll try to understand the significance of his contribution. Now, let me briefly tell you about Napoleon. He's one of my favorite characters from world history, so a bit of intelligence from my side regarding the background of Napoleon. Napoleon was born on a small island called as Corsica, which was an Italian-speaking island in Mediterranean Sea. Around the time he is born, this island was annexed by France. Okay, this island of Corsica was annexed by France, and by virtue of that, Napoleon, an Italian-speaking person, became a French subject. Okay, Napoleon came from a socially elite background. His father was a nobleman, but financially they were not so well off. He was not a very rich person as such. But now, since he was a subject of a very powerful kingdom, the French empire rather we must say, and he was furthermore from an elite social status, noble social status. So this opened up a lot of vistas, a lot of opportunities for Napoleon. As a young boy, he was sent to France to study in some of the best schools there. He was enrolled in a very good school in France, and then later he went on to join the top military academy of France at that time. Now, back in those days, these opportunities were only for noblemen. They were not there for everybody. So Napoleon, in that sense, became lucky that he got the opportunity to study in the best military school of that time in France. As a young man, he was commissioned into the French army at the age of barely, 19, 20. He was just out of his teens and he became an officer, a second lieutenant rank officer at that point of time. He was there in the artillery wing of the French army. Now, as luck would have it, around that same time, the revolution had started in France. And when Napoleon gets his posting, the revolutionary wars start. European powers, Austria, Prussia, and later even Britain, had declared war on revolutionary France. Austria and Prussia were concerned that the success of French Revolution will inspire their subjects to do the same thing in their country. And Britain, although was sympathetic to the ideas per se, but then it was an opportunity to grab because France was a traditional enemy. And for this reason, Britain also jumped in this war. And Napoleon found an opportunity of his lifetime. Napoleon was a military genius and he thrived in wars. Wars was like, his best time. That is his like a painter expresses himself through painting. Napoleon expressed himself through wars. He cut his teeth in these wars first while defending the port town of Toulon. In southern France, there is a port town called as Toulon, and the British Navy, which is a very powerful navy, had attacked this particular town, and Napoleon was posted over there. He was successfully able to repulse that British attack. And this increased his popularity in France, that a young officer was able to push back the British Navy and give it back to them. Okay, naturally, when you do something which is full of bravado at such a time, which is where there is conflict, there is fear, so this is an opportunity for becoming a hero also. He became a hero. After his success, he was then called and made to defend the Directory. If you remember, in the last lecture we have discussed from 1795 to 99, the period in this period France was ruled by a Directory. Now this Directory was being attacked by the opponents of the revolution. So to defend the Directory, Napoleon was called and he successfully defended the Directory. This made him even more popular. His popularity was rising. So then he is sent to Italy. And there again, Napoleon demonstrates his military skills and he is able to capture a huge area of Italy. From a time when France was on the receiving end, now France went on the attack. Under Napoleon's command, they were able to capture areas under Italian peninsula. So this made Napoleon extremely popular. After this, the rulers in France sent him to Egypt. Why to Egypt? Because Egypt was very strategically located. It had On one side, access to Mediterranean Sea, and on the other side, to the Red Sea, which could lead to Arabian Sea and onwards to India. And for Britishers, this was a very big challenge because now if Napoleon succeeded in Egypt, the French will have access to come to India where they are already facing a lot of problems. Tipu Sultan, the Mysorean state, was fighting against the Britishers. It was putting up a stiff challenge. Napoleon and Tipu Sultan had exchanged correspondence also. Tipu had invited the French to come and fight against the British. This made things very dangerous for British. So British dug their heels and tried to fight Napoleon over here in the Mediterranean to cut him off from the rest of France. So in Egypt, he was not that much successful, but he was politically also very shrewd, not just a military genius. He escaped from Egypt, went back to France and did a coup. And through a coup, he took over power in 1799. He created a body called as consulate and became the first consul in this three-member body. The other two were insignificant. Their names are also not important. All the power was in the hands of the first consul, who was Napoleon. So in this manner, Napoleon took over power. After taking over power, Napoleon's first goal was to consolidate power in his own hands. And therefore, what does he do? He signs an agreement with the Pope, 1801, first. The Pope had been offended by the French because of the de-Christianization that France had gone through. We have seen that in the last lecture. During the revolution, religion was very staunchly targeted and the society was de-Christianized. Even if there was a cross in a prominent square in a chalk area, that cross was also removed so that people don't see the symbol of the religion in public life. That was the level to which things were taken. Sunday was removed from the calendar. Monks and nuns were sent back to their homes. They were made salaried employees of the state. Many things had happened. So to assuage or mollify the Pope, he signed an agreement with the Pope in 1801. With this concordat with the Pope, the issue between the Roman Catholic Church and France was brought to a close. Napoleon knew that till the time Pope is angry, the rest of Catholic powers will be forced to fight him. So that issue was settled. Then he signed a temporary peace agreement with all other powers under Treaty of Amiens. Under Treaty of Amiens, he signed this temporary peace with all the fighting powers and he said, see, we have been fighting for a very long time. It is now 10 years from 1792 to 1802. Let us now stop. We have had a lot of warfare. Let us give peace a chance. A shrewd diplomat, he wanted to consolidate his position first. So war was stopped in Europe and taking advantage of this changed situation, Napoleon declared himself as the emperor in 1804. Napoleon thus became the monarch of France. So France, which had started out this journey of this revolution and had become a republic, now once again was back to being a monarchy under Napoleon. Napoleon had become the emperor of France. Okay. Now let us see what Napoleon does as emperor. After establishing himself as the ruler of France, Napoleon then started to show his true colors. He declared war on the major powers of Europe. Austria and Prussia were on his special target. In the course of next few months after becoming emperor, he waged wars with all European powers and eventually defeated all of them. Austria and Prussia were defeated in 1806. And with Austria and Prussia defeated, all of Europe, I mean, these were the two major powers. The rest were not that significant. Almost all of Europe lay at Napoleon's feet, exception being that of Russia. Okay. So now Napoleon was sitting pretty, dominating over the continental Europe. Once he has power, he took certain measures that we must know about. Number one, he united the several German states, 300 of them existed, big and small, and merged them into 39. So there was no single united Germany at this point. Napoleon united these 300 states into 39 states. This was the first step towards unification and creation of a modern single German nation state. Napoleon made a very important contribution for that. Britain, on the other hand, on the other side of the English Channel, was defiant. Britain was not willing to accept Napoleon's domination. And Napoleon did not have the courage to cross the waters because the British were very strong at the seas. Napoleon had a very strong army, but not as strong a navy like the British had. So Napoleon did not risk a frontal attack on British land. Instead, he used economic warfare, what is called as continental system. Napoleon banned English trade from the whole of continental Europe. All the rulers of Europe were either under his control or, exception being Russia, Russia was at good terms with Napoleon. Therefore, all were compelled that they should stop trading with Britain. This system was called as continental system. And remember the context, guys. At this point, Britain was going through industrial revolution. Its factories were mass producing goods, and these goods had to be sold somewhere. Europe was a very attractive market because distance was less. There was no industrial revolution at this point in Europe. So there was huge demand for Britain's products. But Napoleon prevented this so that economically, Britain will collapse internally itself without fighting a war. This was his idea. But the British people showed tremendous resolve. They were like that character from, what is that movie? Pushpa, I think the name is. मैं झुकेगा नहीं, ठीक है? Throughout this history, as we advance towards modern times, till end of World War II, the British people have shown tremendous resilience in face of very overwhelming challenges. And this was certainly one of them. The British resolved that come what may, we are not going to submit to Napoleon. Okay? They used different means to overcome this continental system and still find their way of selling their goods in Europe. Ultimately, Napoleon realized the futility of this exercise, that he was not able to maintain that control on such a vast coastline of Europe, and the idea was given up around 1810. Britain had survived this very serious economic challenge to its existence. Then next, Spanish ulcer of Napoleon must also be understood. Napoleon had sent army into Spain to remove the ruler of Spain. He promised the people of Spain that, see, in our country, we have done a revolution based on some modern ideas and we want to bring this sort of a rule for you. So we are sending our army to remove your corrupt ruler. And the ruler was definitely a problematic one for the people. So people of Spain supported the French army in this cause. But once the ruler was removed, Napoleon appointed his own stepson as the ruler of Spain. This made the Spanish people very angry. The Spanish people decided that they will not submit to Napoleon's rule and instead they will fight a guerrilla warfare. And over the course of next few years, the Spanish people fought a very brave warfare against Napoleon, very similar to what the Marathas did in Deccan against Aurangzeb. And that period is called as the Spanish ulcer for Napoleon's rule. There's a historian, guys, of India, medieval period, Mr. Jadunath Sarkar. Jadunath Sarkar has written extensively, researched extensively on the Mughals, especially Aurangzeb. In his book on Aurangzeb's history, he uses this term, Spanish ulcer, for the Maratha challenge that Aurangzeb was facing. Ultimately, all European powers realized that they've had enough of this Napoleon's domination and they need to come together, form a big coalition and defeat Napoleon. All the European powers on one side and Napoleon alone on the other, they fought a battle and Napoleon was defeated for the first time at Battle of Leipzig. He was exiled, but somehow he managed to come back, once again raise an army and fight another battle, which is called as 100 Days War. Finally, in the Battle of Waterloo, at the end of this 100 Days War in 1815, Napoleon was defeated and defeated for good. He was sent in the Atlantic Ocean far away to an island called as Saint Helena, from where he could never return back to Europe. He died there in exile. This is how the rule of Napoleon came to an end. After the defeat of Napoleon, all the European powers met in Vienna to decide the future of Europe. And in this meeting, they charted out the future of Europe. The future that they charted for next few decades is called as Vienna system or Metternich system. We'll discuss this in some other session. Now let us see the important contribution of Napoleon. What are the important contributions of Napoleon? Napoleon, guys, became what we called in Corona times as, super spreader. Super spreader. The ideas that were coming out of the French Revolution were very attractive to common masses. Liberty, equality, freedoms. And actually, who doesn't want these things? So these ideas had emerged in the French Revolution, but they had to be taken to the rest of Europe. Napoleon became that carrier. Through his wars, when he used to declare to the people of other kingdoms that, see, I am coming to defeat your ruler, to give you a rule based on these new ideas. Napoleon's invasions became attractive to the common masses. They got education, political education about these ideas. So he, in a way, is the spreader of ideas of French Revolution. Then, over the next decades, people of Europe will accept these ideas, lead their own movements, and transform their countries from absolute monarchies to liberal democracies and republics. Nationalism, we've already discussed in the last lecture. Nationalism, the idea that is so central to our state system today, was also exported to rest of Europe by Napoleon. Through the successes that he had in his war, he was able to demonstrate the power of French nationalism. Other people in Europe also started to feel that their nationalism also must be similar, powerful, potent, and that can have an impact on history of Europe. So we will see that nations across Europe will start to rise. Administrative reorganization. Napoleon is known for his military successes, but he was equally great as an administrator, perhaps even better as an administrator. Napoleon was a very exceptionally good administrator also. So he started to devise new systems of governance. An essential feature of this system was centralization. A lot of power was concentrated in the hands of the ruler. Important decisions were being made by him. Yes, opposite of what the French Revolution intended to actually do. He concentrated power in his hands. Napoleon brought in merit-based appointment. Napoleon knew the value of merit. He knew that merit is not something exclusive to particular communities only. Merit or talent can be found in any individual. And therefore, he wanted to have the service of the best possible talent that France had to offer. And hence, he starts merit-based systems. Although he used to profess loyalty to the French Revolution ideas, but he tried to curb the rights of the press. So he was, in a way, opposing liberty, because freedom of press is a part of idea of liberty. It's an individual freedom. Napoleon did not allow press to function independently. In 1807, he brought a system of codes, which are called as Napoleonic codes. Napoleon was ruling over a vast empire, and he wanted a single system of code of laws which will be applicable across his empire, so that there will be uniformity, there will be ease of administration, there will be ease for people also to deal with the state. So what he did was he created a comprehensive code of all the laws in one place so that effective governance could be exercised. As I told you, he was a great administrator, and therefore he conceptualized this grand scheme of codification. This idea was then utilized by states world over. You know that we have codes like Indian Penal Code, Civil Procedure Code, Criminal Procedure Code. There are so many codes, industrial codes now we have. These codes owe their, origin to this Napoleonic code. Napoleon was the first one who did it on such a massive scale. Massive in terms of area also, and massive in terms of the laws that were covered as well. So this is another contribution of Napoleon. Using this code, he was able to bring in equality for all. Okay? The code does not distinguish or differentiate based on people's nationality. The laws were equally applicable for all. So you can see, guys, Napoleon is a contradiction. He upholds equality, he upholds merit, but he suppresses liberty in the form of freedom of speech and expression. So on one side, he is supporting some side of French Revolution, and on the other side, he is suppressing it also. Napoleon reformed the education system as well. He knew the value of talent, the value of human resource. He wanted to modernize France on the lines of Britain. And therefore, he gave a lot of attention to education system of France. A new university system was started. Several new colleges were founded. Syllabus was overhauled. Military institutions were built. And in this manner, Napoleon laid a robust foundation for education system of France. So he was not just a warrior going about fighting wars. He was also a shrewd politician, diplomat, and a very able administrator. In the economic realm, Napoleon knew that if he had to defeat the British, he would have to make France an economically powerful country. And for this reason, he brought about nationalization of resources in France. He encouraged infrastructure, especially railways, roads, so that boost can be given to industries. He promoted banking for mobilization of credit, for access to resources for business. Developed industries, tried to attract foreign investment, encourage investors through proper laws. Reformed the taxation system so that state will get maximum amount of revenue, and at the same time there are incentives for people to invest in ventures. He implemented free trade system so that the exchequer will become positive. There will be positive balance of trade. So such other measures were taken by Napoleon to reform France and make it a powerful country vis-a-vis other European powers. Unfortunately for him and also for France, he lost at the Battle of Waterloo. There's no place for ifs and buts in history, but had Napoleon survived, he would have certainly taken France to a lot more glory than what he actually had. So on that note, guys, we'll conclude the discussion of Napoleon. In my next lecture, we will discuss the American Civil War. I'll see you in my next class. Thank you.
Study IQ IAS. अब तैयारी हुई अफोर्डेबल।